Well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to begin our grief support group virtually as we look to the holidays. I want to welcome you to this grief support group. I am Brad. I'm a chaplain here in the Hattiesburg office of Arden, and we're delighted that you joined us. There's a wealth of resources that are available to you through your Arden family. We've got a lot of different folks that have gone through a lot of different scenarios and come alongside a lot of people through the years, and just want to continue to be able to minister to you and help you through the holidays. Today, we want to be able to help because the holidays and grief can be a very difficult mixture for us to consider. Many things are just simply more difficult through the holidays. And that I acknowledge that where you are in your grief process will have an effect on how you deal with the holidays. In other words, how far you are removed from the loss sometimes can have an impact. Maybe you've not developed the skills and the tools that you need to adequately deal with the holidays, and this is all very brand new to you. So we want to know that we're compassionate, you to know that we're compassionate toward that as we walk through all of these things. So what's true for everyone is that grief is more difficult through the holidays, no matter how far behind us that loss might be. It's supposed to be a joyous time. It's supposed to be a time where we spend with family and friends. We have the whole idea of the birth of a Savior, peace on earth, and goodwill toward men. And sometimes we're just not feeling it as we walk through all the expectations that come with the holidays, all the customs and traditions and celebrations that may just simply be too much. And sometimes those are exactly what we need. So we're going to talk a little bit about balance as we walk through all of those things. So what do we do with our feelings through the holidays? Well, I think the best advice that I've ever heard anyone give is feel them. We've been given our feelings for a purpose, for a reason, and they're there to help us to cope with everything that comes our way. So simply feel them. Remember that your grief is an expression of love. The only reason that we're grieving someone in a loss is that we had a relationship with them. We have a love for them that's very real, that continues. It doesn't pass away with them. So our love continues, and our grief is an expression of that. And our hope today is that we will be able to encourage you in some way to find balance as you walk through the holidays. Now, what do I mean by balance? Well, when we consider balance, if we somehow feel like we've not done enough, well, there's a sense of regret that goes with that. Well, maybe I should have done this, or I should have done that. And then there's the other side of that equation. If we go and we run at it and try to pretend like nothing ever happened, and we try to go on with all of the traditions and the customs and be everywhere and be everything for others, sometimes we can find ourselves in a total exhaustion. And so there are problems with both scenarios. So what we want to talk about is finding a balance with those where we're not totally wiped out and where we feel like we've done enough. And if you find yourself already in one of those circumstances, I'm going to encourage you to be gracious to yourself because you're still figuring it out. This is many times, like I said, our first time in walking through this, and it's unique to every loss. So it's new to you regardless of how many losses that you've had in life. Know that as you walk through the holidays, that when we have this idea of peace and joy and goodwill toward men, that tears are okay. It's a must. I would encourage you to be gracious to yourself when you do have those moments where you just become emotionally overwhelmed, where you just feel like, well, I've reached the limit. Well, you didn't make a mistake. You just reached the limit. You found that breaking point where the flood of tears just begins to pour out. And so just be gracious to yourself. You wouldn't condemn someone else for feeling emotional about the loss of a loved one. So be gracious, whether that happens in the presence of others or whether that happens in a grocery store or doing some Christmas shopping or in a conversation somewhere. Be gracious to yourself. Tears are okay. It's definitely a must. The goal is to find a place where we don't live there, where we're not confined to our tears, where we're not permanently feeling like this is all I'll ever experience, all I'll ever be walking through. in those things. So balancing those things out. Have some self-compassion through the holidays, knowing that we're limited on our abilities. Acknowledge your needs. About the holidays is often for many of us about doing for others, trying to meet others' needs, trying to make sure they have a wonderful Christmas season or a happy new year or whatever celebration might be coming our way. We want to think about their needs, but be compassionate toward yourself, acknowledging that you have needs all along the way. One of the more helpful things that we can do as we deal with grief, as we walk through the holidays, is remember that we're not alone in that there's a lot of other people that have had loss. And maybe there's people that you know have had that loss. And one of the most effective ways to heal ourselves is to reach out and minister to others. Maybe it's sending them a card. Maybe it's taking time to make a phone call, or perhaps even a visit, or gather with them and pray for them. Just whatever's a part of your life, whatever your strength might be, and reaching out to them. As we minister to others, it brings healing to us. So I would encourage you, again, to find balance. We can't do too much. We can't send a card to everyone. We can't visit everyone, but we can do what we can do. So balance those things out. Well, you might want to be able to measure your progress too. And one of the more helpful things that a lot of people have found is journaling. With the busyness of the holidays, if we don't write down how we're feeling, we may not even remember last week, much less last year, on exactly how we were feeling and what our thoughts were. It can all be a fog. And so if you want to be able to remember, so that maybe you have some points of measurement for your grief process, to know where you're strengthening, to know what you're thinking, to know how your thoughts have progressed, journal those things. Now, for some of you sitting here, saying a year is terrifying, because maybe you're very new to this grief journey, and to think about it being years is a difficult thing. The reality is that grief is a lifelong process, but we don't always deal with it like we're dealing with it right now in this moment. In fact, I spoke to someone yesterday in talking about this virtual grief support that Arden offers to our families and to anyone who desires to come along and utilize this resource. And they were talking about how a wonderful thing it was. And they began to share with me that they had been on a 20-year grief process. They lost a sibling early in life to a chronic disease and difficulty that snuffed out their life. But their grief continues. Holidays continue to come. But it's a very different process for each of us. And again, the place we are, how far we are removed from the loss may change what it looks like, but it's grief nonetheless. There were some themes that come out of that conversation with this person who had lost a sibling so many years ago that kind of resounded as the conversation unfolded. So I wanted to share those three things that they shared with me yesterday. One of those was, do not fear. The second will be, do not fail. And the third, do not forget. Now, let me unpack those so that we can understand what I'm talking about here. Do not fear. Simply do not fear your grief. Know that it's going to be a part of life. Know that your emotions are real. So don't fear your emotions. Don't allow emotions to cause a fear for the holidays. We know that it's going to be difficult. We know that it's going to have added pressure, and we're going to need more strength as we walk through those things. But don't fear simply because they're coming. Don't fear going to events. The balance of that is don't fear not going to the event. We got to leave ourselves out. We got to leave ourselves a place where we can find a reprieve. Maybe we exit early from events. Maybe we just make a kind of an appearance and we're on about something else. We don't want to fear it completely and allow that to grip us and live with a regret. We don't want to do too much and find ourselves completely exhausted, because grief in and of itself is exhausting itself. And the second point there was, do not fail. Now, that's one of those things that's hard to measure sometimes. Remember, it's your grief process. You own it. It's something that you're going to have to work through in the way that you're equipped to work through that. And maybe that's reaching out to others. Maybe you're more quiet, more reserved, and you're trying to figure this thing out sort of solo. But don't fail to know that grief is something that's going to be necessary because it's based on our love that we have for someone. If we try to meet the expectations of others, we set ourselves up for failure. If we have no expectation at all, then we're really probably not going to go anywhere with it. So know that it's not a failure to break down. Know that it's not a failure if we feel everything. Again, our emotions are important. Our emotions are real. Don't feel like it's a failure if you smile and laugh. I know personally in dealing with grief, sometimes if we feel like we forgot for just a moment, it can feel like we failed our loved ones. So don't fail. It's not a failure for us to laugh or to smile or to feel and have all the emotions and the breakdowns. And those things may come very close together. It's not a failure when relationships change because of loss. It's not a failure when new relationships develop as a result of loss. We just have to balance those things and walk through them as it happens. Know that it's not a failure to be unable to carry out the wishes that maybe you've placed on yourself in regard to your loved one, expectations that you feel that they had of you. Maybe they were expressed very clearly from your loved one. I want you to do X, Y, and Z. It may seem harsh, but hear me out. And when I say their expectations passed with them in many ways, they may have been well intended, but some of the things that are expected of us sometimes are impossible. I'm going to give you an extreme example so that you know what I mean. I pastored a lovely couple for several years. And as their pastor, had the opportunity to be invested in their lives in a lot of different ways. She became ill, knew that she was going to pass, and she tried to encourage her husband, tried to tell him a lot of different things. In fact, she told him that she wanted him to remarry and to, in her words, move on with life. You and I know that in grief, we never move on, we move through. But her encouragement was to remarry. In fact, she had gone so far as to pick out his next wife and say, I want you to marry so-and-so. Well, as some time had gone by after her passing, he came to my office one day and just said, Pastor, there's no way I can do that. He did eventually remarry, but he didn't marry that person. So that's an extreme. But some of the other expectations that others may place on us, always remember this tradition. Always go and do this. Always go and be a part of this during the holidays because that's something you enjoyed together. It's not a failure. So don't fail to allow yourself to move into different traditions, into different things as the holidays come your way and as you deal with all the traditions that go with it many times. Don't fail to rest. There's a lot happening with the holidays. There's gift buying sometimes, there's travel, there's all the cooking, events at our work, events at our, maybe our schools, events, maybe in our community, event at church, all these different things that come our way. Don't forget that grief is an enormous drain on us, mind, body, and spirit. So don't fail to allow yourself to rest as you walk through these things. Lastly, I would encourage you not to forget. Do not forget. Don't forget that though life seems to be changing, that your loved ones, in their absence, that life continues, because we often come back to the place where we know that such relief has come to our loved ones from the suffering of this life, and we often talk about the glories of heaven. Don't forget that we are encouraged, that we are somehow relieved in so many ways to think that life goes on for them in the presence of heaven. Don't forget also that life goes on for you. Life continues in the here and now. Don't forget the ever important statement that we believe that there's life after death for them. And the question is there life after death for you? Don't forget that you have needs. Don't forget that you have wishes. And many times those wishes and needs change based on our loss. But don't forget that they're still there for you. Don't forget that you're limited in ability. In fact, this past Sunday marked 1 year to the day that my brother and I found our mom peacefully passed away very unexpectedly in her home, seated on the couch. So don't, as I say all that and I share that, I was limited, very limited that day, very out of character for me. When there were several people that remembered that date and they were so encouraging, they called and I simply couldn't talk about it that day. So don't forget that we're limited in our ability. Yesterday I could talk about it. Today I could talk about it. Sunday, there was no way that I could talk about it. So just know that sometimes we're limited. Don't forget that right now, not right now doesn't mean never. So there may be some things that are best pushed into the future just a little bit. So finding that balance. And this one's sometimes a hard statement to get a hold of. Don't forget that better days will come, especially when it seems impossible. We can get so caught up in the moment. We can get so caught up in what is not that we can forget what can be and what will most certainly will be in so many different ways. So don't forget that right now is not forever. Don't forget that you have needs. Don't forget to rest. Don't forget to be encouraged from within. Don't forget to be compassionate and gracious toward yourself. And I'll leave you with this thought. Don't forget that your Arden family is here and that we care for you, that we desire to be a help to you. We want to encourage you through the holidays and know that our team is continually praying for you and that there's many resources that are available from your Arden family, from the nursing staff that you had, from our bereavement coordinators, from our chaplains, and also from our social workers that are out there. There's a lot of things that are available, and we want to encourage you in that. Lastly, we want to encourage you to reach out to those that are in your community, maybe your church family, your family, when you're feeling like you might be stuck in some capacity. As you walk through the holidays, find that balance. Don't do those things alone.